The Crow Stone, an obelisk made of granite and standing approximately 16 feet high, and is just situated off of Chalkwell Beach and marks the limit of the Port of London Authority jurisdiction. It was erected in 1836 to replace a smaller stone which originated in 1755 and was Grade 2 listed and now stands in Priory Park. The Crow Stone is often used as an assembly point for local swimming clubs. The original stone was about 7 foot high and was inscribed with 1285 God reserved the City of London, and the names of the Lord Mayors were intermittently added to it. It is said that in 1197 Richard I sold the rights of the crown in the River Thames to the Lord Mayor and the citizens of London, and in 1285 a statute was passed concerning the preservation of fish in the river. Richard II ordained that the mayor should have the power given under earlier statutes. This is a plausible explanation for the years being inscribed on the stone. The Crow Stone, along with the other monuments at Staines in Middlesex and Yanlet Creek in Kent, marks a stretch of water which falls into the jurisdiction of the Port of London Authority. The grand obelisk at Chalkwell can be reached when the tide is out by foot. However, there is enough water at high tide that it's best reached by boat or swim, but noting that the estuary has many different currents. The Crow Stone has a copper plate to mark its erection in 1836. The two stones stood side by side originally, however the smaller original one was removed and gifted to Southend Corporation in 1950, and at this point it was retired to its resting place in Priory Park, where it can still be seen to this day. The Crow Stone, once officially recognised as the City of Stone of Leigh before Westcliff was developed. It is unknown how the stone gained its name, but one possibility is that it may come from the nearby tenement in 1536, which is crows. Another is thought that the stone was a favourite place for the beach-combing crows to colonise. The Crow Stone was celebrated back in the early days when it was visited by Lord Mayors. In 1842, Sir John Pirrie, accompanied by Thames officials, first held the city sword and colours against the Crow Stone, which was then circled around 3 times by boat or on foot. Wine was then served afterwards, and glasses were raised to the words "God preserve the City of London," which is currently in place on the stone. No such festivities are celebrated today, but it does remain a popular attraction to people visiting the beach, and people are often seen walking out to it. The Crowstone in Chalkwell lines up perfectly with the one at Yantlet Creek on the Isle of Grain in Kent. The jurisdiction of which these stones mark is said to have been exercised over both fisheries and navigation. Apparently, the London Stone in Kent is not easily accessible, as the area in which it stands was once large military range and the home of coal-fired power stations, and anyone visiting does so at its own risk. There is approximately a 4-mile distance between this stone and the Crowstone. It is thought that the London Stone dates around 1856. Both this and the Crowstone mark the point at which the River Thames ends and the North Sea begins. try and mark it up with a Sharpie pen. I don't always do that, but I do if the stone is not terribly round, just so that I fit it in place. I usually cut it very slightly too big because you've got to file some of it away anyway to make the ends meet. So as I just said, you have to file the ends just so that they meet quite tightly. Solder doesn't fill holes, it just joins, and if your hole is still there or a little bit of a void, it's always going to be there. So having made the ends meet, I put a little bit of silver solder paste into there. It is sterling silver solder paste, but I do tend to file it away a little bit at the end of it anyway. It's now time for the blowtorch. You're heating the metal, and it's the metal getting hot that then melts the solder. So you'll see that I'm doing it pretty much all of the metal, and it doesn't take very long at all. I've used the smaller one because the larger blowtorch would probably just melt it away. It's now time to bend it around. It's not going to fit perfectly to begin with, and you do have to do a bit of bending and squeezing until it does. But it is important that you get it right this time, because you're going to then mount it onto the silver in the correct shape when your stone's got to fit in afterwards. And now it's time to get the piece of sterling silver sheet. This is 0.3mm. I'm actually going to mark it this time with the Sharpie pen, but usually I do it by eye. But I'm trying really hard to preserve and not waste so much silver on this one. So at 0.3mm I can cut quite easily with some shears. Not a great deal thicker than that, and you have to use the ring saw. So you have to take off the blue plastic part on there as well before you fit it on, because obviously that's protective. In this bit here I now go on to put a little bit of the solder paste around. It's got the sterling silver as well in it. It's going to take me a minute or two just so I make it nice and even. So with the solder paste in place, I now bring out the big guns and put the hot torch on it, which is MAP gas. I do turn it down quite low though, but because the silver at the bottom is a little bit of a chunkier piece than the gallery strip, it doesn't take long, as you can see, but I tend to use the bigger one. You'd be there all day with the small one. So after quenching it, I then bring it back, I dry it, and I cut off the excess silver. As you can see, that none of the silver that I'm cutting off goes to waste. It will all go into the melting pot and become something like the Chalkwell cockle or the other bits that you've seen me do. I then smooth down the edges and make them less sharp with a rotary hand tool. This actually fits onto my main Dremel, but it's just a handpiece that does so. And then it's time to sand it down and file it smooth. These little buffing pads you see go from quite a high grit to a really fine grit. I'm actually starting off around about a medium because the silver's quite nice apart from that. I then choose a jump ring. I usually a split ring. I don't buy any specific sizes or anything. I buy quite a varied amount, look in the thing and see what I'm making, and just pull out what I think looks best on it. I then sort of put a little bit of the solder paste on there and I line the jump ring up, and I usually join it up with the split attached to it. Again, it is time to then bring the big guns out again and heat it. You're heating the whole metal, including the sheet. I don't take it too close and I do turn it down, and the reason being is that you'll melt your gallery strip dead easily, but if you can warm it up slower and then go in every so often, you will see the silver solder change in the middle, and it generally then changes on the top as well. Now it's attached, I just pick it up normally and I just tap it like I have, just to show that it is attached to it. And then back to quite a bit more filing down and buffing until you've got the back quite shiny and silver. I also will file down the centre part of that, because then that's the bit that's showing through your stone. It will gleam through a bit brighter. This is where I bring the steel wire brush out to bring off some of the oxide that has come on as a result of heating the metal. I buff up and take away all the residue from the solder on the inside part, because this is going to gleam through behind your stone and make it less dull. This is one of the most satisfying bits, is when you load your polish onto your rotary tool and it starts to bring it up to a real high shine. Coming to the back of the piece, you can see a lot clearer how it starts to really shine up with that metal polish and gleam. to set the stone. What I've done, you'll have just watched, is that I just push the stone in just to make sure that it fits nicely. This is now a burnisher, and I'm pushing around the gallery wire to just clip the stone and hold it in place. The little bubble that you see in it, hence I've named it the crowstone bubble. The glass wasn't completely flat, and I've left it unchanged because it's just the way Mother Nature intended. So I give it a little final buff up with the silver cloth. I actually put one of the silver cloth all newly wrapped into each piece that goes out to anyone. It's just a nice thing to do. I'm now attaching just a little clip to the top that will allow the pendant to go through a chain. And there's your finished piece. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check us out as Designs by La Mer on Facebook and Instagram, and where you'll find all the links to everything that we've done today and all the other videos as well, and some of the jewellery that I've made. Be sure to subscribe and share with everybody. Thank you. See you next week. Bye bye.